Hello, and welcome to the first edition of Conversations. I will be your host, Devin Boyce, and today's guest is Phil Czuprynski. And we're going to talk about just some of the adversity that the two of us have possibly faced in life and how that's contributed to our experience and the types of connections that we've built with other people as a result of that, and also what we've learned from it. So I guess I'll start by asking you, Phil, what are some of the most adverse situations you found yourself in?
My communion.
Yeah.
Because I had to go to communion school every day.
Mm-hmm.
And like every Saturday I would go to Polish school, and then I'd have to leave Polish school early to go to the priest house, to my communion school, and it was just completely whack. Like being taught by priests on how to accept communion, and then the things it was just weird.
Okay. And I guess you grew up Catholic in Poland? Yeah, very Catholic. Okay.
So Catholic, I was an altar boy for 11 years.
Oh wow. Okay. And what would you say the most valuable lesson you took away from that part of your childhood would be?
Altar boy camp.
Yeah.
How to patch up someone, a wounded person.
Okay.
And how to save someone that's drowning, CPR, and how to make a fire.
How to make a fire. That's a good skill to have. Has there ever come a point in your adult life now where you've had to utilize some of those skills, like the life saving or the CPR or anything like that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's more so when we've gone on holiday to Poland. My sister fell into water, and my dad reached in and pulled it out by her hair. Jesus. She wasn't breathing.
Yeah.
And so kick into a CPR and bang, 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 pump on the chest until she coughed up water.
Oh.
And so I'm lucky because I wouldn't have known what to do if it wasn't for the thing. And making a fire, countless times in camping.
Right.
It was just, I thought I was a fire king.
Oh man, so I guess it's safe to say that that's some of the skills and experience you took away from that from that time growing up has served you quite well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I kind of regret backing away from the whole church concept. I sort of pulled away and stopped going every Sunday because I was just sick of being an altar boy. And the family always wanted me to continue because I was lead altar boy and I was the boss. And I know it sounds weird to say boss. I could tell all the minions what they had to do.
Yeah.
Minions.
Oh man.
It was cool, but they kept telling me I had a bit of a power trip going on.
And what was it that initially made you want to step away from that?
You know when you have that smoke in the urn when you burn the frankincense and myrrh?
Yeah.
The fact that they always got me to do it,
Right.
and the fact that I learned how to do it so good that I almost burned the church down.
Oh wow.
I just opened, one of the coals fell out and there's just smoke everywhere, and it was kind of embarrassing.
So that made you want to turn away from that whole experience?
Well, every Sunday it reminded me of my
Yeah.
Every Sunday it reminded me of my mistake.
Gotcha. Alright.
And it was honestly a mistake, it was honestly an accident, but no one believed it as an accident because I loaded up with coal.
Yeah.
And they said I put three coals in there. I had
Oh man.
I had like 16 in there.
Yeah.
And I had this stuff the smoke was pouring out, like you couldn't see us.
Yeah.
There was that much holy smoke.
Yeah. Well, I can see you obviously get a kick out of it, so it must be a pretty special memory that time in your
It's a
life.
very special memory.
Yeah.
Like, I always consider that I've always break down a church.
Mm-hmm. So why not? Oh man.
I didn't even mean to do it.
And did it have any sort of impact or negative effect on your relationship with your siblings or your relationship with your parents when you chose to step away from church?
Sort of with my parents.
Yeah.
Mum turned her back on me.
Oh man.
And she's just like, nah. In Polish, there's a saying, bez Boga, ani do proga. Which means without God, then nobody comes step into the door.
Jesus.
And
As I see Jesus.
they're heavily
Sorry.
Yeah, that's alright. They're heavily religious, and bez Boga and the proga, it's like don't bother getting married without God.
Yeah.
And ever since I stepped away from church and freed up my Sundays, I could go out on Saturday nights, and sometimes the party life just takes over.
Yeah. I can relate to that, my friend. Sorry.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you party hardy?
Well, yeah. I spent back in 2010. I was probably about 22, and I moved to Whistler, British Columbia, to work for the Olympic Games. And Whistler's like a snowboarding town, a lot of partying, a lot of loose people. And once the Olympics was finished, I just stayed. I was like, fuck this, I'm not leaving to go back to Ontario. And I ended up staying and living there for 4.5 years. And
loving the party.
Loving the party. Like, I don't think I could have. Yeah, until it ran out. But yeah, in terms of enjoyment, I don't think I could have picked a better place in Canada to spend my mid-20s. It was pretty good.
That's
pretty good. A lot of really solid memories from that time. Made a lot of really great friends.
A lot of life lessons learned.
Oh yes, many.
And that's
very many.
Part.
And learned a lot about myself during those years too, as well.
Another very important part.
Yeah, it's invaluable. So have you ever decided to go back to church, or you just kind of stay away from that now?
I'll go back to church for
Yeah.
the main occasions like
Okay.
Easter, Christmas,
Right.
and just to keep the parents happy occasionally.
Yeah.
Like Day of All the Dead.
Okay, yeah.
It's the Holy Dead Day. It was the 31st of October. And it's when we, in Polish tradition, you go to visit all the people that have passed from your parents. So you go to all the cemeteries and you have this day walking and you just visit everybody. And it's kind of special because it's like a day to remember the people that you truly loved.
Okay. They do something very similar in Mexico. They did.
They're dead.
Yeah, they did.
It's Halloween.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
America does it too, but they dress up in costumes.
Yeah, no, it's the same in Canada. People just dress up in costumes and send their kids out to collect candy. It's not about really mourning the dead or paying homage to those that have passed who are loved and respected. It's more or less just going out to get candy. And when you become a teenager, then exactly when you become a teenager, it's more about drinking and throwing eggs and shit till all hours of the night. So yeah, I guess it differentiates depending on where it takes place. So other than I guess so that was a big. So growing up and going through church and deciding to leave and things like that, that was I guess a pretty big generator for adversity when you were young. Massive, yeah.
Because I was always the poor Catholic boy. You can't go out, you can't do anything on a Saturday night because I've got church on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So it sort of shut me off from a lot of people and shut me off from a lot of being freedom. Wasn't able to go out and go to mates parties and stuff.
Yeah.
And so then that kind of made me the outcast at school.
Right.
Because I wasn't at those parties. I wasn't the one going kissing girls and stuff. I was too busy. I was too busy churching.
Yeah. Too busy churching.
Too busy churching. Too busy being an altar boy. Too busy being what my parents thought was necessary.
Yeah. Okay.
In saying that, I kind of miss those days.
Yeah.
I miss going to church. I miss having the whole church thing and the Sunday family dinner.
The community sense of it.
My priest came to me when I had my accident.
Yeah.
Came to anoint me.
Oh wow.
And that freaked me out more than anything. I'm like, aren't you supposed to anoint people that are almost going to die?
Yeah.
Am I going to die?
Yeah, kind of. I guess you get that. Wait a second, what's going on here? Type feeling.
What do you guys know that I don't?
Yeah. What are you not telling me? What the fuck is going on here?
Why am I getting blessed? Why are you putting this all on my head?
Oh shit.
And it's all on my guts. Like, what's going on here? And he came in with this, the head sister and everything, and it was special to see him. But as soon as he started with the prayers and the anointing and forgiving me for my sins, I felt better.
Yeah.
And then that's one thing that I appreciate for the Catholic Church. It's one place where you can just let it all go.
Yeah.
Like you tell them anything and everything, and as bad as you've been, they don't care. They forgive you.
They forgive you.
And then that's been massive in my life because I've had bad things happen to me.
Yeah.
And I just always think, if the priest could forgive me for doing what about you,
Confession, right?
I can forgive you for doing this to me.
Okay. Well, I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
So it's definitely something that I appreciate from the Catholic upbringing.
I'm guessing that it has a very distinct amount of value in terms of what it contributed to your life as a young person and how you were raised, and I guess also the values that you were able to generate from it.
Even later on in life, most recently, I've had friends do some pretty bad stuff to me.
Yeah.
And normally I would have said, no, see you later. But I just think to myself, well, peace be with you. As long as I still love you, you've always been a good friend. Yeah. You fucked up. You made a little mistake. So what? So be it.
Yeah. Sometimes
we're not perfect.
Yeah, no, that's true. No one is perfect. I guess sometimes it equates to, like, if you can find it within yourself to forgive people, it's almost like you're actually it's not almost, it's you by doing that you give yourself peace. Yeah. Because you're not holding on to that negativity or that resentment 100%. That you held for that person to begin 100%. With. Yeah.
You sleep easier at night.
Yeah, I bet. Shit. That's definitely, yeah, man, for sure. I can also think of times with that for myself where I held grudges against people or felt pissed off about a certain person, and then it's not until you let those feelings go that you realize that, wait a minute, I was causing most of that grief myself.
How good is it?
Yeah, it's pretty beautiful, man. It's definitely good. And I heard you mention a couple minutes ago your accident. Is that, if you don't mind me asking, like, what happened in your accident, Phil?
Speeding along at 180 kilometers per hour on a motorbike.
Jesus Christ.
And
sorry, I'm being blessed.
That's okay. Because Jesus Christ is who saved me.
Yeah.
Like, I was speeding along at 180 k's, car pulls out. I thought, oh yeah, here we go. I'm up shit creek. I don't know I can't stop it from here. Yeah. So what I do, I pick up the front wheel and hoping that I could jump the car.
You jump the car.
Well, I thought if I put at least another metal object, the motorbike, in between me and the vehicle, I'm not going to get hurt. Yeah. And so I crashed, I flew about 35 metres, and in the process, all I could think was cartwheel, stop. And one leg, one arm, one leg, one arm, and just tumble. And it wasn't, ended up not a pretty sight, but I'm still alive. I'm still going to tell the story.
Definitely something.
And everyone, definitely grateful for that. Yeah. I'm also grateful for all the people that I've met along the way, and including yourself.
Well, thank you.
Good, decent people that have been in a shit situation, but are trying to make the best of it, and are generally trying to better themselves in any which way. Like Ant, who we met today.
Yeah, I met Ant today. Yeah.
Great person. Yeah. Like, my family can't even come to visit me because it's too far.
But he's here.
But he can.
Yeah. So it's and having people like that in your life, like in our lives, is it's definitely invaluable, man, because like they contribute so much positivity and so much support, especially in times when we need it most. That it's something to be really grateful for. And I could tell, like, when he came for dinner and he was hanging out, I could tell you guys had a good connection, man. It's a beautiful thing to see, really, because.
Well, I met him in the hospital.
Yeah. That's right, I met Tom. Right? I met Tom in the hospital.
This thing, I met him wearing headphones on his forehead. I walked up to him and just told him, wait, bro, you look like a rhino, no offense.
Put him down.
I pulled it off his head and I put him around his neck. I'm like, that's where you're supposed to wear him. Yeah. He goes, oh, bro, I didn't know I could do that. So I untangled them for him and I put him around his neck. I'm like, see, look, now you look like bits. Now you look sick, you know? And he goes, oh, thanks, man. He goes, I appreciate the honesty. So I gave him a slice of my mum's cheesecake. She makes the meanest cheesecake. Yeah. She's going to make one for all of us.
Dad, I'm down. You're not going to twist my arm beats with fucking cheesecake.
Coconut cheesecake.
Oh, yeah.
I'm there. With the tropical fruit topping.
Oh, okay.
That's my mum's specialty. Yeah. And she made that for my birthday. And even the hospital staff loved it so much that they stole the rest of it. There's half a cheesecake left and they stole it. Straight into the fridge. Just
go in the fridge. Where's the rest of my cheesecake, guys?
Oh, the stuff ate it.
We're not sure, Phil.
No, they told me the stuff ate it.
Oh, they told you.
Yeah.
Jesus.
It just made me hate the stuff so much more. And that's when I stopped being a good patient.
I guess hospital staff they can be a hit and miss.
Most of them are really good.
No, yeah, it's true.
I couldn't walk before I got to hospital. And like in my accident, I damaged myself pretty badly. Yeah. And after the accident, I had 4 days in a coma. Yeah. And if it wasn't for my girlfriend, I probably wouldn't be here because I heard her talking to me, and to her that opened my eyes too.
That's amazing, man. That's great.
And that's why I love her bits and pieces.
Yeah. I met her when you guys first came here, man. She seems like a pretty lovely young lady. She's
my guardian angel. Yeah. But does anyone realizes? Yeah. Like, I opened my eyes to her and just like licked the words.
That's fantastic. It's invaluable to have people like
and
that.
She almost cried. Yeah. Well, she came down and like I felt that she was hugging me so hard, and I felt the tears rolling down her face and rolling down mine. And it was one of those really special moments of life. Yeah. You just go,
those are the good cries, though.
Yeah.
Those are the cries you welcome.
This is what I want. That's when I realised that was it. This is what I want to marry.
Yeah. That's great, man.
Even though 14 years ago I told her I was going to marry her, and that was my opinion on her. But I finally ruled her in.
Yeah,
it's been like fishing for that big kingfish.
I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you. That's good. You don't give up, man. It's definitely interesting how situations like situations like this, like grievous injuries and long times in the hospital and things like that, near-death, I guess you'd call it near-death experience, how it brings you closer to the people that care about you, the people you care about. It can actually reestablish and rebuild relationships that could have been damaged before.
You find out who actually cares.
Yes. Oh, man.
And the genuine carers, as opposed to the fakers, the ones that say they care, but for some reason they're never there.
Yeah. You find out who actually has your back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's refreshing. Yeah. Like it's inexplainable. It's like so much newfound respect for my family. Yeah. And even though I've got a brother and a sister, so as all siblings do, they fight. But
I got a sister too. I know what that's like.
I've got newfound respect for both my brother and my sister. Yeah. Because they've been holding my mum together. Helping my mum get to me to visit. They even brought my mum to me. Yeah. Like so.
Just kind of brought everyone like this.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny the result out of an accident, because I never thought that they all cared that much. Because I used to sort of rebel a little bit too much.
It definitely it's a definite clear indication of the people who actually deeply care for us, for sure, man. It's like people started I don't want to say they start coming out of the woodwork because they're always there, but I guess it establishes how strong our connections are with those people.
Shows us who's concrete.
It shows you exactly, yeah.
Who's going to be there no matter what.
Yeah, and how much you actually matter to these people as well.
I've called friends up to come visit, and they've asked me, where's my $300?
Oh man, come on.
It's like, mate,
$300 for what? Like money you owed them in the past?
Nah. He lost his wallet in my garage.
Oh, come on.
And he's trying to blame me for it. I'm like, mate, it's long gone.
It's like, do you know where I am right now? Like,
I honestly could not care about you. I couldn't care about the $300. I'm just happy to be alive, and thanks for clearing my life up.
Thanks for asking if I'm okay.
Thanks for clearing my life up, because I don't want to know anymore. Yeah. So, bye. Yeah. No,
it's definitely it's almost like it's almost like what's the best way I can put this? It's like a recycling filter for your life.
100%.
It shows you who's meant to stay, and the important people that are actually important, and the connections you have with them, and how to make that stronger, and how to value that moving forward. And disregards doesn't disregard, but it kind of makes us aware of all the relationships that don't serve our lives.
It's a filter.
Yeah.
It's the perfect filter. It's how we can move forward and be productive about it, rather than have all these naysayers and the people that are just tagging along. Like, it shows you what really matters, who really matters, and that's what I appreciate out of this accident.
It shows you where people's integrity lies.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh man, because that's a big one. Because if people truly care about us or they truly love you, it doesn't matter what they're going through or what difficulties are placed in front of them. They'll find a way to be there for us, or they'll find a way to make it work, find a way to help you any way they can, which I think is invaluable.
Even people we've met.
Yeah.
Like, look at Ant.
Yeah.
Ant comes to visit me today.
Yeah.
Whereas my family can't even come to this because it's too long, it's too far. Ant lives just as far away. He caught a cab, he caught public transport, and still got here.
Yeah.
So it's like...
Well, that's the thing I've realized too from these kinds of experiences, man, is that if people want to make it happen, they'll put in the effort to make it happen. You know, if they want to make an excuse, they'll make an excuse. So, like, if they want to be there, they'll be there, and that's pretty much as simple as it is, really. And you can't put a price on the value of that, because, as we talked about a little bit earlier, like, those are the people that are meant to stay in your life. Those are the people, those are the relationships and the connections that truly matter, because those are the ones that are going to stay with you until you're old and gray, or until you're not here anymore. Like, that's, like, it's it's a beautiful part of being around, really. So yeah, it's definitely it's a tremendously important part of our lives, is the connections that we have with people, and how we can strengthen those connections, and how we can become closer to people, and as a result become more aware and closer to ourselves as well. And yeah, it's just it can be a hard lesson to learn sometimes.
Sometimes there's no gain without pain.
No, it's true, man. It's very true. If you don't mind me asking, like, what was the oh, sorry. Just back a little bit so it's even. What were the, hey everyone. What was the end result of your injuries? Like, what were you left with after the accident?
Broken legs, broken arms, and my brain split into two.
Fucking Jesus. Oh my God.
A lot of jarring, a lot of bruising.
Yeah.
But, what can I say? I'm still here.
Yeah.
Takes more than...
Considering you broke both your legs too, you're walking pretty good, I'd tell you that
Takes more
much.
than a motorbike at 180 k's to kill me.
What's what they say sometimes, you Polish are tough motherfuckers, eh?
Bulletproof.
Oh man.
The Polish fought back tanks on horseback. Okay? So I come from that generation.
Yeah.
Tanks on horseback.
Giving up's not an option.
No.
Nah. Nah.
What does those words mean?
Yeah.
Give up?
Give up.
Give up?
Give up what, my seat?
Give up? Give up nothing.
Yeah. Oh, that's good, man. Yeah.
Never give up. We're not here for a long time.
No.
We might as well make the most of the time that we have.
Yeah.
And
No.
we're both fortunate enough to have survived suicide. You've had an accident as well?
Yeah, I had an accident as well, motorbike accident as well. I don't think I was going as fast as you were. But yeah, I was just driving home from work on my bike, and was going down the road, probably doing about 70 Ks, and a guy U-turned in front of me. So this fucking guy clearly didn't check his blind spot, because if he had checked his blind spot, he would have seen me behind him. But
Was it night time?
yeah, it was nighttime.
Did your lights work?
Yeah, my lights were on. Yeah, my bike was in pretty good condition, so it was fully functional. And so the guy U-turned in front of me, and it's weird too, because this is like burned into my head. But like, I saw him U-turn, and in my helmet, I was like, "Fuck!" And I hit my brakes, and because I was riding a scooter and not a motorcycle, like, my weight took over, so the bike went down, and then slid like underneath his car. And as a result of that, it threw my body against the side of his car. Yeah, so like it was pretty gnarly for sure.
Injuries?
because I cracked my head so hard on the side of his car, I had a subdermal hematoma and bleeding inside my skull. It broke 15 of my ribs, punctured both my lungs, fractured one of the spinal columns in between my shoulder blades, and
At least you're still breathing, laughing.
yeah, it's true, and lacerated my spleen, and it did some fucked up shit to my knee. I can't run anymore, and like my knees got like it tremors sometimes, so like I can't run, and it's hard to push weight through my knee. But
it's the muscles.
Yeah, it's muscular.
It's muscular, and they just tested me for it at physio, and it's something about having fast twitch fibers.
Yeah.
And they take over when it's apparently they take over when there's muscle injury, significant injury.
Yeah.
They take over because it's just natural reaction.
Yeah.
So
it's your body trying to fight what happened to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, they found fast twitch fibers in my calves. When I walk, apparently my ankles like shake. I don't feel it, but apparently they can see it.
Yeah, my knee had that real bad. They had to, and because I smashed the left side of my head so hard, I didn't know this before, but I guess the left side of your head controls the right side of your body, and the right side of your brain controls the left side of your body. So because I cracked the left side of my head so hard,
the front is your anger.
Is your anger? Huh. Well, that was why that explains a lot, because I was pretty pissed off in the hospital. And yeah, so because I had taken so much trauma to the left side of my head, it basically turned off the limbs on the right side of my body. So, like I remember, one of the things that I remember was, like I don't know how this happened, because they had me on anesthesia, because they had to put me in an induced coma to do the surgery on my brain.
Yeah.
And when I woke up maybe a week or a week and a half later in the hospital, and I was like, what the fuck's going on? What's going on? I couldn't remember anything that had happened, but because they had me all hooked up, they had a breathing tube in my throat, and I woke up, and that's the first thing I could feel was just this something in my throat, and I was like, what is that? No. And I went to try to reach for to pull the mask off, and I couldn't move my right arm. Right, and I kind of started to panic a bit, and I was like, okay, what the fuck is this? And then went to grab it with my left hand, and a good friend of mine, Wayne, he was sitting next to my hospital bed, he grabbed my hand, and he's like, no, you can't do that, you can't pull your mask off. And he held my hand down, and then, I was looking around the room, and I saw my mom there in the room, and I was like, I started to get really agitated and freaked, because I was like, what's going on? Am I in fucking Canada? What's happening? And started to get really agitated and freaked out, and the doctors came back in and knocked me out again, and I was probably out for a few more days, and they transferred me to the Epworth Hospital. And I remember, it's funny because my mom's got it's comical to watch it now, but she's got footage of the physiotherapist they had to teach me how to walk again. So there was a physiotherapist has each of my arms underhooked, and they're walking me down the hallway in the hospital, and I'm like fucking Frankenstein. Trying to get, and it was.
But you're walking now.
Yeah, which I couldn't be more thankful for, really.
I give Epworth credit because it's due.
Yeah.
They're actually a very good hospital for recovery.
Yeah, no, they're a great hospital.
Great
hospital.
And I couldn't walk when I was at the Epworth.
Yeah.
And they had me up and I'm walking within 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I refused to get out of bed for 5 of those 6 weeks.
Really?
So I could have been walking 6 weeks earlier.
Were you consciously aware that you were refusing to get out of bed? Yeah. Why? What was the reason for that? Well,
I had aches and pains all my legs, and I was just I'm not doing this. I know I can't walk. I'm not getting that.
You don't want to participate.
I'm not getting that. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Shove it. See you later. No.
Nah. 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 It's not happening. Let's fuck away from me. Yeah.
Not doing it today.
Nah. Not today. Come back tomorrow, nurse.
You get my girlfriend in here, and then we'll think about it. My girlfriend came in, and she goes, "Come on, babe, go on, big beach. You can walk. Go on, big beach. Stand up, step out, give me a kiss."
Yeah.
I stood up, I stepped towards her, and gave her a kiss.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah.
So, granted, it's there's always going to be a motivator.
Something that's going to make you go.
And also a motivator.
Your lady will do that. For sure.
It just so happens that she did.
Yeah, that's good, man. It's awesome that she stood by you through all this, and made it somewhat tolerable to go through an
It's
experience
amazing.
like this.
And that's why I'm gonna marry her.
Oh, good on you, man. Fuck. So let me ask you this: did you have any like, was there any time that you were in the hostel where you had like, I guess like any sort of mishaps or like situations that were kind of difficult to deal with while being in the hospital, like in terms of like
Oh yeah.
rehab or mobility or
Yeah.
like communicating with people?
Definitely.
You had PTA as well, right? Post traumatic amnesia.
99 days.
Oh, that's a fun time, isn't it?
It's the funniest.
You're fucking pissed off always. You don't even know why. Fuck. Oh, man.
Angry for the sake of being angry.
Yeah.
But my most memorable moment of that time
Yeah.
was just before my birthday. I specifically asked my physio, he was doing his research physio, trying to get me to walk. And I could already walk at that point. And he trained my legs. I asked him, oh, no, not so hard, because I want to be able to walk on my birthday.
Yeah.
He told me a new asshole. I was unable to walk. On my birthday, I woke up on my floor, underneath my table, my face hurting extremely much. So I got up to get out of bed to go to the toilet, and I collapsed because he worked my legs so hard. I was worst DOMs ever. And I smashed my face on the other side of the table. And I laid there, and I peed myself on the floor.
Oh, man.
So I couldn't get up, I couldn't move.
So you got your first birthday kiss from your bedside table. Fuck.
It was a hell of a kiss.
Oh, must have been.
It was a second.
Well, if you pissed yourself, it must have been good. Jeez, Phil.
Could have been worse.
Oh, man.
Could have been worse.
Well, yeah, everything can always be worse.
I did the shit.
Um,
I was lucky I did it.
oh, man.
I was lucky the nurses finally found me.
Yeah. But ultimately, though, you're grateful for your time in that hospital.
Oh,
because
yeah.
It helped you out
Definitely.
significantly. Yeah.
They helped me more than anyone else could. Like, they put the hard yards in where no one else would.
Yeah.
And I'll give them the credit where credit's due. They're probably the best rehabilitation hospital I've been to.
Especially in terms of putting up with people in PTA.
And they cop a lot.
Yeah.
And they've got a system and it works.
Yeah.
And I'll give them credit.
Right on. Okay. And you gotta give people credit where credit's due for sure.
Well, I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk when I first got there.
Really?
Yeah. Jesus. And I'm having a conversation with you now, and we walked and got ice cream today.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true, we did. Yeah.
So, credit where credit's due. Thank you, Epworth.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you, Epworth. I definitely wouldn't be able to sit here and have this conversation with you if it hadn't been for time there, for sure. So yeah, fuck, man. So I guess like following this experience and the time you've had in the hospital and like what you've got to like, what would you say is the most positive thing you've taken away from this whole experience?
I'm so much less angry.
Yeah.
Like, my anger has been diffused. I used to be able to crack it at anything and anyone at any time of day.
Kind of knock that shit out of you, eh?
And it's kind of knocked that shit
It
out.
doesn't have anything to do with being Polish, does it?
No.
Absolutely.
It's got something to do with having a Polish father. And a heavy Polish father, and a very heavy-handed one.
Yeah.
And in saying that, like, I don't feel any bad towards my dad. Like, he's passed away now.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. It's his own fault.
Yeah.
And in saying that, what I've learned is that there's more to life than anger.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man.
And
Absolutely.
that's having this near-death experience.
Yeah.
And seeing who's actually come out of the works and actually helping me. It's just like, I just love and appreciate every single person that has. And I love all the people that I've met along the way, including yourself.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, right. But I've met some really good people out of this experience. And I wouldn't have met them if it wasn't for it. So in some like sort of silver lining on the playbook, I appreciate what's happened.
There's been positives that have come from a pretty shit situation.
And like Ant, I met the guy who was wearing headphones in his head.
Yeah.
And I just walked straight up to him, and I was never that brutally honest.
Yeah.
Like, never that I was just, man, look, you're right, you can't do that. take him down, put around your head. Now you look suave. Now you look like a sick cat. And it's just like, I was just untangle it here, a little bit here, and then bang.
Yeah.
It's just like, man, thanks for being so honest. I've never had someone be so honest. It's just like, that's me. One positive from the accident.
Head injury will do that to you.
I've cleaned up all my like little white lies and all my bullshit.
That's good. That's good, man.
It's the way to be. There's no time to be wasted on lying and bullshit.
Life's too short for that, man.
Too precious.
As we both almost found out. It's you gotta live with integrity, man. You gotta give credit where credit's due. You gotta not
Crack it all the time.
You gotta not crack it all the time. Yeah, being angry just doesn't do anything good for you.
No.
You know, just it actually hurts the inside of your body, like physically. So yeah, there's no need for that. Yeah, well. Oh man, all right. So we're back from a quick break. In the first half of this, we were talking about just some genuine life experiences, some of the adversity we faced, some of the outcomes.
What genuine life experiences have you had?
Have I had? Oh fuck, quite a few. My accident was pretty significant as well. I feel like it definitely has changed me for the better as well, minus the injuries, of course, and the somewhat mental deficit that I now have, and just some of the negative results of kind of what it did to my brain and my body. That's definitely not fun. But other than the recent accident, I think I've faced some pretty adverse times in my life as well. Growing up, I didn't always have I guess full disclosure too, I guess some of this stuff it's
Cuts a bit deep.
It's pretty real, yeah. But yeah, growing up from, I'd say, a fairly young age, most of the time I was growing up, I was definitely afraid of my dad. I say dad, but he's technically only my stepfather. I had been with my mom since I was 2, but he's the only dad that I've ever known. And I was very scared of him growing up, and the reason for that was he was a pretty physical person, and I think that stems from him growing up in Jamaica, where physically disciplining your kids is a lot more accepted and regular and normalized in that country, so it's not really seen as something to look down upon, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, and it made growing up with a dad like that somewhat difficult, because just sorry. Yeah.
Here's
That's fine. I'll grab it tomorrow.
tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Good night. So yeah, just as I was saying, it definitely generated some pretty adverse things growing up, for sure. There was a few times where he kind of crossed the line in terms of physical discipline, and as I got older and I became a teenager, I started to get much bigger, and it pretty much, once I got to the size where he couldn't hit me anymore, because I was basically almost the same size that he was, he kind of gave up. And at that point, it was pretty much just me against my mom, because it was almost okay, well, if my dad was, and I guess what I kind of gathered is that I guess his mentality kind of operated in a way was, if I can't physically discipline him, what am I supposed to do? And it kind of just left me and my mom at odds with each other, and that produced a lot of friction between my mother and I. Even it got to the point where things were so bad that and this is when my sister was really young too, because she was born when I was about 15, so she was like a baby, and things with me and my mom were getting pretty bad to the point where I was basically kicked out of my house at 16, and that was pretty difficult.
Preachers and choir, man. Preachers and choir.
Yeah, that was pretty difficult, man. I lived homeless for a little while, several months actually. The first place I went, I remember the police came to my house and they're like, because my mom had called the police to remove me from the house, and the police came and they forced me to leave, and they took me to like a homeless shelter in the downtown area of the city that I'm from, and like I went into this place and I was like a kid, I was 16, and everyone in there was like,
I'm not doing this.
Everyone in there was like a grown man in their 30s or like in their 40s or 50s, and like everyone in there was somewhat sick, or they had mental issues, or they had been like on the streets for years, and I was like, I don't belong in a situation like this. Like, this is pretty messed up. And then,
So what did you do?
so I stayed there for a little while, and then I eventually found, I got in contact with this place called the Notre Dame House, and it was an establishment also in the downtown area of my city, and it was like an old Victorian house that had been converted into, I guess, like a care facility for people, for younger people in a situation like I was in, where they would provide you with a place to live and they would feed you, but you had to you couldn't stay there all day. You'd wake up and have breakfast, and then you kind of had to piss off until lunchtime, and then piss off again and come back at dinner. And then you could stay and then sleep the night, and then when the next day came, you had to kind of figure out what to do with yourself again. And this was pretty difficult because I was still making an effort I was in high school, and my high school was on we call it a mountain in downtown because my city's on two different levels, and my high school is up the mountain, so it was pretty difficult to orchestrate that. And it got to a point where I had it's kind of a funny story actually. It was one morning in the shelter when all the other kids, because we only had a certain amount of bathrooms upstairs, and the bedrooms were upstairs, but then once you left the upstairs area and went downstairs to where the galley and the kitchen was, the upstairs door locked, so it locked you out, and so you had to be out of the upstairs area at a certain time. And I remember all the other residents that morning, they had been in the bathroom for extra long, so I couldn't get in the bathroom to have a shower right away. So by the time I got in the shower and got out of my shower, the staff had already come up and locked my bedroom door, because they locked all the doors during the day. And I was just standing there in a towel, and I was like, shit, I can't get in to get dressed or anything. So I went downstairs past the locked door, and asked the staff, I'm like, hey man, can you let me back in to your, I can't get dressed. And he's like, well, you know what time you're supposed to be out of there at? And I was like, I'm standing here in a fucking towel, man. Let me back in my room so I can get dressed. And he proceeded to give me a bit of a hard time about it, and I had a pretty short fuse as a teenager, and I was very quick to get pretty angry, so I kind of cocked it and let him have it verbally, and we got into a bit of a disagreement. He let me in to get changed, but then they kicked me out of the house that day, and I didn't really have anywhere to go. So what I ended up doing was, this is kind of fucked up, but in the downtown, a couple blocks away from where that house was, there was an old, it was an old department store building and apartments that had been condemned. So it was closed off and locked up, and it was a department store in the bottom, and then apartments in the upstairs, and it had a theater area in the back of it. And somehow days prior to me getting kicked out of the house, me, myself, and just some of the other residents there as teenagers, we had were just kind of exploring around downtown, and we found a way into that building and kind of meandered around in it for a little while, and found that there was apartments that were just empty. Some of them still had furniture in them, but the building was condemned, it was closed off. And when they kicked me out that day, I remembered, I was like, oh yeah, there's apartments in that building. So I just said, whatever, fine, fuck it. You want me to leave? I'll leave. So I left, packed my bag up, and went to that building, and just kind of like hunkered down in one of the empty apartments that was in the building. And it was weird because the buildings, the apartments in this building, they still had running water and they still had hydro. So, which I couldn't understand because usually when places get vacated and they're not being filled with anyone, they're not being rented, they usually, like, they would have shut the building off. But there was still power and there's still water. So I stayed there for a few days, and then there was this one night, and the door, the lock on the door, like, didn't work anymore because I think it had been kicked in or broken at some point. So I had like a piece of extension plug, like, tying the door off, and I pushed something in front of it so no one could get in. And I remember it was one night. It was probably like the middle of the night, and I woke up to someone like shaking on, like, trying to get in the apartment that I was sleeping in, and I couldn't. I was 16. I was like, "What the fuck's going on? Like, who's trying to get in here?" And I got pretty scared, and I could hear voices talking in the hallway. I could hear them, and I was like, "Fuck!" And I got really panicked, really scared, and then in that hallway where the apartments were, if you went outside into that hallway where there was other apartments, there was like one of those big old like steel. It's like a blast door. It's like 5 inches thick and it's on rails and it slides open. Yeah, and so I heard them open that and like kind of leave the area. So I was like, okay, this is kind of my chance, right? So I like grabbed my bag, like untied the door, opened it really slowly, looked, made sure there was no one there, and then I navigated. And it was dark too, because like there was a bit of power. There was no. Oh, that's right. I'm mistaken. There was no hydro in the apartments or in the building, but there was water. So I was using like a flashlight, and I navigated out of the apartment and like down the hallway, and then opened up, and you walk down a flight of stairs, which took you to like this old school like theater type like ballroom area that was in the building. And then I navigated my way across that, found the basement. Found the ground floor of the building, and then from the ground floor were the old shop and things where I found the basement. I went down into the basement, and there was almost like there was like an office down there filled with all this old office stuff and files and things like that. And then beside that room there was like, it was what looked like what resembled a bedroom, and there was like an old mattress in there, and it was like the door was lockable, and there was like some old candles and stuff. So I just packed my stuff down there and just hung out and stayed down there for a little while.
How long was a little while?
Probably like a couple more days. I think probably about another 3 or maybe 4 days that I stayed down there and kept going. Like, 'cause I could still go to the shelter place for meals. I just couldn't stay there. They wouldn't let me stay there anymore. So I'd go there, have my meals, and then just go back to that building. And then after that, it got to a point where like winter was starting now, and winter in Canada is pretty cold. And it had gotten to the point where winter was starting. I didn't have a winter jacket anymore, and I remember calling my mother, crying, begging her to just come home. If you could please just allow me to come home for Christmas. Like, I'm on the street, like, I don't feel safe, I can't make it to school properly, like, this is really starting to fuck with me a lot. And obviously things with her and I still weren't good, but she's like, okay, you can come home for Christmas, that's fine. And then, so I went home for Christmas, and I was only there for like maybe a couple weeks, and that didn't last very long. We kind of started butting heads, and my dad was still pretty much like, I'm not dealing with this. If I can't beat him, I'm not dealing with it. So again, it was me and my mom doing this, and that only went on for so long. And then I moved out again, and they helped me find an apartment, which was downtown. And so I moved into this apartment, and was renting this apartment for a little while. Actually, it wasn't really an apartment. It was like a room in a house that some guy had split into like rooms to rent. He was like I think he was like an old Serbian fella. He was my landlord. I think his name was Serge. And so I moved into his house, rented a room, and then at one point, like, a guy that I was friends with in high school, this guy Tom, he had been going through similar stuff with his parents, and his parents kicked him out of his house, and he didn't have anywhere to go. So I was like, well, you can come like crash in my room for a little while if you want, until you figure stuff out. And he was like, okay. So he stayed with me for a little while, and we kind of got, like we were friends at the time, and like we would do like a bit of random shit as teenagers, like walk the streets getting drunk at night and smoking pot and doing all kinds of dumb shit that teenagers do. And then at one point, he had mentioned to me, he's like, my uncle's friend Steve has a house that he's renting like up on the mountain in the nicer area of town, and he's got some empty bedrooms there. We could possibly move in with him. And I was like, oh, okay, that would probably work out. So Tom and myself ended up moving in with this guy named Steve, and I didn't realize it at first, but Steve was a pretty big drug addict. And so Tom and I were living with him, and I remember I woke up one morning, and like I had an Xbox, I was a teenager, I had an Xbox, and I woke up to one morning. You never ever been a kid with a video game system and you know what the sound of a video game system controller is when it hits the ground? Like, you know immediately what it is. And so that sound woke me up, and I came out of my bedroom, and Steve was like about to walk out of the house with like my Xbox, and I was like, well, like, what are you doing, man? And he's like, oh, you owe me rent money, and so I'm gonna go sell this and this and that. And like, that was the moment when I realized, I'm like, fuck, like this guy's actually pretty loose on drugs. Like, he was about to go sell my shit for drugs because I didn't owe him rent money. I had paid him when I moved in. And so I convinced him to not to take that and to put it back, and he did. But then I was really suspect of this person moving forward. And then I remember one night, Phil, I was at work, because I work as a dishwasher at a local restaurant, and I was at work, and this was before I had a cell phone. And actually, no, I did have a cell phone, but at work I couldn't have it on me. It was like one of the first cell phones I ever had. And so I was there, I was at work, and they kept calling my work. And eventually it got to the point where my manager at the restaurant came in to like the dish pit, and he's like, listen, man, he's like, your roommates keep calling here. Like, just come talk to them because I'm tired of them calling. I don't know what's going on. So I went downstairs and I got on the phone, and I was like, what's going on, guys? And they're like, oh, we were just wondering when you would be home. And I was like, I don't know, man, like when the restaurant closes and I've done my job, like probably around 10:30, 11 o'clock. And I was like, what's this about? They're like, oh, we just wanted to talk to you about something. And I thought it was kind of strange, but I was like, okay, sure. So I hopped the phone, went back to work, and then I finished my shift, got home, and put my key in the door, opened the door, went downstairs, and this was a basement apartment. And I got to the bottom of the stairs, and Steve was right there. And I was like, hey man, and he's like, and he started going on about, where's my jade Buddha? Like, he was like accusing me of like things going missing and that it was my fault. And I was like, I'm sorry, man, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he like backed me up the stairs. Like, he's walking at me, so I'm backing up the stairs. And he had like, he's got a fucking katana in like the stair railing, and he fucking pulled that out and like chased me out of the house. And chased me down the street with a fucking ninja sword. And I obviously ran from him because I didn't know what else to do. This guy was like a grown man, like in his 30s. And eventually he stopped chasing me and pulled out the phone, called my mom, pulled out the cell phone, called my mom. And I was like, I need you to send Dad over here like right away. Like, I don't know what's going on. I think these guys have done something with my stuff. He just chased me down the street with a fucking katana. Like, I don't know what's going on. And she's like, okay, your dad's coming right now. But she's like, call the police. Like, you need to call the police. So I did that, hung up the phone with my mom, called the police, explained what was happening to the police. And then I just kind of just waited there on the side of it. It was just a side street in the next neighborhood over. And I just kind of waited till my dad came and picked me up. He picked me up and went back to the house. At that point, the police were like in the driveway. He got out of the car. And the police were like, okay, what's going on? I kind of explained to him what had just happened. And the police officer was like, well, he's telling us that you took all your stuff and moved out last week and that you broke in tonight. And I was like, no, sir. Like, I was at work all night, and you can call my employer and clarify this with them. They've been calling me all night at work. And I was like, listen, man, I just want to get my stuff. and I'll just leave. And he was like, okay, like we'll let you come in and grab your stuff, and then we can sort this out. I was like, okay, sweet. So I went in, like walked downstairs with my dad and the police officer. Went in my bedroom, Phil, and empty. Like the only thing that was in my room was the blanket in a pile on the floor and my pillow. They had taken my bed. They had taken all my clothes, any like small sentimental things that I had from like when I was a kid, any books that I had, like everything. Basically everything that you would have in your bedroom now, gone. And I started to kind of freak out and lose it, and I was like, what the fuck's going on? And like I was starting to lose control of myself a bit because I was super upset, and my dad was like, he lives here. Like I brought him home from work a couple nights, and then my mom called my cell phone and she's like, what's going on? What's happening? And I told her, and then she's like, give the phone to the police officer. And I gave him the phone. I could hear my mom talking to him. She's like, he fucking lives there. Like he lives there. Those guys have done something with his things. And the police wouldn't do anything. And as a result of this, I didn't really trust police for a very long time. So they basically said, well, it's your word against his, and all we can do is write a report, and then you can make a list of your belongings and come to the station tomorrow and file like a grievance and give us a list of your stuff, and we can investigate it. And I was like, well, what's going to happen with that? Nothing happened. Like I did that, and my stuff was just gone. And so I had to go back and stay with my mom and my dad again for a few weeks. My mom was in the midst of buying a home, so she spent her washer and dryer money. She'd buy a new washer and dryer to move into the house pretty soon, and she spent that money to go and buy me all new clothes the next day because I took everything. All I had was what was in my backpack on my back and what I was wearing. Yeah, it was pretty fucked up. So that happened. My mom took me there, bought me all new clothes and things like that, and then I stayed with my parents for a couple weeks. And then I eventually found another apartment to rent at a different location on the mountain. Moved in there, lived there for a while, and then lived with friends for a while. And then eventually I got my own, like, pretty good apartment in the downtown area. Again, I lived there for a few years actually, until, I think I lived there for about 3 or 4 years, up until I left and went on to Whistler to do the Olympic thing in 2010. So yeah, that was it was a pretty adverse time in my life, to be quite honest. And that's just a part of it. There's all kinds of other really fucked up shit that happened. Little knickknacks and little squabbles here and there, little haberdasheries here and there. Whole bunch of little instances that were happening as I was a teenager growing up in that fucking crazy city that I'm from. But that was probably that was definitely one of the ones that stood out most and that had like a very heavy impact.
And now, welcome to Melbourne.
Yeah. Melbourne was alright, right up until that motorbike accident happened. But yeah, so it was and that's the thing too, that I feel like that situation, those couple of situations that I experienced as a basically a teenager, fucking kid pretty much, growing up and kind of going through that stuff, like it really affected my amount of trust and faith in people. And I was kind of just like, okay, well, it's just the only person I can really trust is myself.
And then that's all it is.
Yeah, and I was like that for a long time. Well, there's a few people, like they say once you get to, I heard this when I was younger, but I think it was one of my older friends told me this. He's like, once you become, because he was someone that I was working at another restaurant, and he was someone like that was like an adult there. He was like in his 20s when I was still like a teenager, and he was like, I'm gonna explain to you right now. He's like, by the time you get to be my age, he's like, you can count anyone you're friends with or anyone you trust on your 2 hands. It doesn't go past that really, and that's proven itself to me now more than once, for sure. So yeah, it's really interesting how
everyone seems to have their own agenda.
Yeah, I definitely found that out the hard way, for sure. It's not easy to allow yourself to trust people. especially back then, like it was very hard for me to trust somebody, like actually actively trust them, and believe what they said or believe what their like had faith in what I thought their intentions were. So it was definitely
No opener.
what's that?
Definitely no opener.
Oh, for sure, man, absolutely.
But it's what's made you the man you are today.
Yeah, yeah, no,
And so, in the end, there's the positives.
oh yeah,
Positive outcomes.
there's always positives. Even
Even in the darkest light, there's a funny little light somewhere.
every shit experience. It's funny because I think we both learned this the hard way. But every shit experience you have in your life, or every time somebody breaks your trust or betrays you, or something bad happens to you, it's an opportunity to learn from that and add it to your toolbox and allow it to make your allow it to improve your resolve and like become stronger from it.
Agreed.
Or you can wallow in your own self-pity and handle it, like be weak about it and be like, oh, poor me, why did this happen? Or you could step the fuck up and be like,
It's
well,
never happening again.
this happened to me, but not only did this happen to me, but it's taught me something. What has it taught me? How can I learn from that? And how can I change to make sure that something like this doesn't happen to me again, or that if it does happen to me again, I'm more equipped mentally or physically to be able to handle it properly. And those are some of the lessons that you can only learn by going through some pretty hard shit in life.
Life experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, what's I guess other than like Catholic school and things like that, like what are some of the challenges that you may have faced that are similar when you were growing up?
I, like you,
Yeah.
had quite a very interesting father.
Yeah.
An interesting father by he didn't mind the little bits of abuse.
Yeah.
He ran me over with the car.
I'm sorry, what? He ran you over with a car?
Yep. He shot me with a nail gun.
Jesus Christ, man.
Just for getting things wrong.
Whew.
And yeah, so
Guess I got off easy with a Jamaican dad, eh? Fuck.
We've all had like interesting experiences. Well, interesting experiences, and as we all say, load of those experiences.
Yeah.
I learned there was a stand in front of my dad driving a car again.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, man. Fuck.
but when he wouldn't pay me for working with him, I hung out on his roof of his car
Yeah.
until he drove all the way to the bottle because he was a bit of an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So he drove all the way to the bottle and slammed the brakes just to get there. Just to get me
That threw you off the car.
Well, no, I held on.
Jesus.
I took the accelerator to get it off the back.
Oh, man.
But all in all, like, it's all experience.
Yeah. Did,
I learned never to get on top of a van.
yeah, no, for sure. Did you ever, like, I don't like asking you this kind of stuff because I know your dad passed, but were you ever able to bring yourself to a point where you could forgive him for that stuff?
I forgave him on probably his last trip to hospital,
Yeah.
and it was absolutely wasted sitting in the front seat of my mum's car.
Really?
And I opened the door, and like, we'd been having a fight that day, and it was heaps hammered.
Yeah.
He looks up at me and goes, "I love you,
Yeah.
I love you, son, I love you." And it's probably the one and only time that I had a meaningful hug with my dad.
Mhm.
And just all the bad shit that happened, I just let it all go.
Yeah.
It's because
It's kind of like a way for you to release that, let go of it.
it's like he knew his time was up.
Yeah.
He knew he'd gone too far. Like, and just hearing those words from him was like, okay, that's desperation right there.
Yeah.
Like, and at first I thought, like, it was all right, it was like, I'm like, that's my dad.
Yeah.
And then hey, I've only got one.
Still your pops, right?
He's telling me he loves me.
Yeah.
And he's telling me he's sorry for things. There's still so many unanswered questions, and I'll never get the answer to them
Mm.
because he passed. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, he said, "I love you,"
Yeah.
and so I told him I love him too.
Mm.
And I told him to stick with it and come back. And he come back.
Mm.
But all in all, he was bulletproof.
Yeah.
He was bulletproof. Like, he's in 17 times to hospital for drinking too much. He at one point he had 3% liver functionality.
Yeah.
3 weeks after that, after being in hospital for 3 weeks and eating all the good hospital food, 97%
Wow.
liver functionality.
Wow.
So he had a regenerative properties that I've now inherited from him.
You Polish fuckers are tough.
And that's why I say, like, if it wasn't for my mum and my dad, like, my granddad from my mum's side, he was a machine too.
Yeah.
84 years old on the job site, he'd be lifting 2 buckets of concrete, where all my mates were lifting 1.
Shit.
And he'd just power through it. He'd sweat, he'd stop, he'd get his hanky out, wipe his forehead, put his hanky back
Back
away,
to it.
and then straight back to it. Whereas I've been telling my mates to lift 1 bucket that he's carrying, and then take him 2 people to lift it.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, he's got 1 on each arm, mate. Fucking put some other grease into it. Like, fuck said, you guys want $250 for the day? My granddad's getting you $250.
Yeah.
And then they started working.
Yeah.
But I'm still paying my granddad $300.
Yeah.
Paid them $150.
Fucking right. You pay the ones that are working hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my granddad was happy. He was so chuffed that day.
Oh man.
But
That's good.
if you got this half-hour lunch break,
Yeah.
you get a nap. 84-year-old working like 20-year-olds couldn't do what my 84-year-old granddad was doing.
Jesus.
That's just embarrassing.
Yeah.
And that's what we find embarrassing about these coming up generations. They just haven't got that background about them.
Don't even get me started on that. It's like, yeah, some people have that grit. Some people have the grit. It's just naturally part of their DNA, and it's a natural part of them. So they just do it. But other people are. I'm finding that some people are
free.
definitely gluten free. Fuck.
Gluten free.
Some people are a bit
Soft.
a bit soft. Yeah.
There's a
Little
lot
bit.
of softies out there, and we're not pointing fingers or anything,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of softies out there.
Yeah. Being soft doesn't get you anywhere.
No.
It makes it being soft it makes it exponentially harder, it makes it exponentially more difficult to deal with the hard stuff that you have to face if you maintain this mentality and this
Correct.
level of softness.
Correct.
You've got to face some hard shit to be able to learn how to face some hard shit and be capable of like withstanding difficulties both mentally and physically, because they're going to come throughout life
100%.
inevitably. Like, you're going to have to face it at some point, whether it be the death of a loved one or the loss of a job or the change in career or a horrific accident. You know, like it's
Well, it's brought us closer.
yeah. Definitely.
The colourful silver lining of this paper.
No, yeah, there's definitely, and that's the thing too. That's one thing, and I don't know, you might have got this too, but it's one thing that like after like living in the hospital for 3 months and stuff like that, like that's I think that's probably one of the biggest silver linings that I was able to take away from this is that, like, yes, bad things can happen to you. Yes, you can be on like the bad side of a misfortunate situation, but the way in which you choose to handle that situation and the mentality that you build for yourself moving forward through that situation is going to ultimately determine how badly the situation affects you and whether or not you learn from it or you continue to degrade from it.
I had both ways.
Yeah.
I degraded heaps at the start,
Mm.
and until my girlfriend came in and she just said, "Oh, listen, stop looking at all the negatives.
Mhm.
Start looking at all the positives."
Yeah.
And it's like, you're still alive. You should be dead.
Yeah.
You're still alive. Be grateful.
Yeah.
Be grateful for the things. Be grateful for the fact you're in hospital. Be grateful that you're getting meals. So what if it's not the meal that you want? You've got 25
You can eat.
choices.
Yeah. And so,
Suck it up. Try the ones you haven't tried.
Yeah.
It'll be nice.
and sometimes that's what it takes. It takes
A loved one.
takes a loved one to give us that perspective. And like, for me, it wasn't even from a loved one. It was from Tom in the hospital, because I think I was in PTA for like 42 days or some shit like that, and I was an angry bastard in PTA.
So
I was scaring hospital staff, was fucking screaming at people all the
I
time.
feel so bad. 99 days.
And yeah, Jesus, man. And it's like,
99 days, and they only started to really put in the hard training when I started threatening the nurses.
yeah, that's the thing too. It's like you At least for me too. Like I didn't know that I was being verbally abusive or aggressively angry towards people. It wasn't registering in my mind that it was happening.
I knew.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like
I thought I was going to kick him to the wall to the nurse.
kicking wall nurses through the wall. You can't kick nurses through the wall, man.
Oh, it's really true.
Oh man.
Because I got up earlier that night and went to walk outside the door and I saw a nurse sleeping on the couch.
Oh, that's not
what is this sort of shit?
Yeah.
You got nurses sleeping on the couch, you let her sleep, you're going to come into my room at 2 o'clock in the morning and turn the fucking lights on so you can write on my fucking board.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
I'll kick you through the fucking wall. I swear.
You can't go kicking women through the wall, man. Come on.
At the time I felt it was appropriate.
Oh man, yeah, I thought a whole bunch of shit was. I thought everything that was coming out of my mouth in PTA was appropriate too. And then once that was over, and I like spoke to the hospital staff about it again, like, do you remember half the shit you said to us and like how you were reacting? And I was like, not really. And
No.
they told me some of the stuff that I did and some of the stuff that happened. And I was like, fuck, I'm sorry. Like, didn't mean to do that. And I think what was like the big shift in the way I was allowing things to affect my mind was when I met Tom in the hospital.
Yeah.
Because Tom had been through an accident that was far more severe than the accident that I was in. And he was in a wheelchair. He wasn't able to walk by himself. He had nerve damage to his eye and a whole bunch of other like pretty serious injuries. But Tom was a positive motherfucker. Like, and meeting Tom and witnessing like his level of humility and his level of compassion, not only for the staff but for himself, and not being negative about what happened to him. He was just kind of accepting where he was at the time and putting all his focus and all his energy into being positive and getting better. And that like had a major shift in my mindset, because for me it was like, well shit, like this is someone who's been through a far greater accident than what I've been through. His injuries are much worse and he's fucking happy. Like, he's positive.
Huh?
You know? Huh? Yeah, he always fucking says that. It's hilarious. But yeah, I'm like, this guy, he's positive. He's happy. He's making a conscious effort to look at what has happened to him in the most optimistic way that he can and not feel sorry for himself or allow it to make him a negative person. And that, like, it gave me a tremendous amount of respect for Tom. And it like I said, it allowed me to be able to shift my mindset and think that, and what I ended up thinking of was that maybe this accident happened for me as opposed to it happening to me. And I started to actively exercise that thought process in my head. It was like, the accident happened for you, not to you. It happened for you. This is a chance for you to become more aware of like how you treat people, where you displace your energy, what you consider valuable, the relationships with people that you have, and move forward in a more positive and more constructive manner and not be such a negative prick. And like, I will be forever indebted to Tom for that, because Tom showed me that.
Shifted your mind in the right way.
He shifted my mind in the right way, man, and it was... Fuck. I'm gonna go back to Canada and send him random voice messages. It's just gonna be, huh? And then hang up. Cause like, yeah, it's, oh man. And it's like, for me, it was tremendously admirable to me that someone, cause Tom's younger than us. Tom's only about 21, but for someone of his age to have that much insight and that much couth in terms of what happened to him and what it was going to take to get better, it was very respectable and very admirable to see that, and refreshing as well, because it's like, well, fuck, if this guy can't walk anymore and he's happy, what the fuck am I walking around pissed off for? Like, honestly. So
Tom's a guy in his own
oh man. Well, those country boys, they're a bit different, but yeah, man. So it's definitely been, it wasn't the time I had expected to have in this country, But it's fuck. But it's definitely shown me. It's definitely given me
Life lessons.
life lessons, big life lessons. It's given me a much greater understanding of myself.
Nothing better than that.
And when my mom came here twice, and like it drastically has improved the relationship I have with my mother. And I am like, if that has to come at a cost of me almost dying, that's a price I'll pay, because it's drastically strengthened the most important relationship I have with the most important woman in my life. And I don't know what would have happened with that if I had just kept living here and doing what I was doing and not really, because things with my mom weren't the greatest when I left to come here to Australia. Like, we were arguing all the time about stupid shit. I would allow some of the things that she would get stressed out about or she would go on about to affect me, and then like I would respond with negativity and then she would respond with negativity, and it just fucking spiraled out of control until we were in an argument.
I'm glad you've seen the light.
Oh man, it's
I still do that with my mum.
You still do that with your mom?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Fuck, make an effort not to do that with your mom.
I try all the time.
Yeah.
But my mum was a very negative person. When she starts on a negative spiral, she's like, Mum, I don't need this negativity.
That's relatable,
positivity.
man.
But
It's very relatable.
It's understandable.
Well, it is understandable that they can be negative. They raised us,
Yeah.
so like, you know. And I'm sure
that's so bad.
I'm sure that wasn't all fucking butterflies and rainbows.
We're not so bad.
Nah, not now, but
Not no more.
yeah. You want to go for a cigarette?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to call it and end this tonight?
All right. This has been what are we calling this?
Just conversations.
This has been Conversations with Dev and Phil, and we're out for tonight. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Much appreciated. Thanks for the great talk.
Absolutely, Phil. Thank you for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
You're most welcome.